Hey, will y'all run down the center aisle and teach people how you run down in church? Come on, run down the middle. Come here. Oh, yeah, pretend you don't run in church. Get your line. Yeah, look at them. Look, Wednesday night, they will hurdle over 3 pews while the band's practicing. But right now, they won't even walk down the center aisle. Everybody needs to know where they're going. Come on. Yeah, we're going to go play. Let's go play games for Jesus. Anybody else want to go with them? Come on, I see one over there. If he wants to go. Did you ask anybody else wants to go? You're walking in the back. Nobody knows where you're going. Nobody can see you. Walking around like a bunch of girls. Angry girls. Children's church is just down the hall, down the steps, around underneath, over the river, through the woods. No, it's downstairs. Hey, some of y'all was asking what some of this food is up here. If you look in the bulletin, we are collecting enough food to put 20 Thanksgiving meals on, 24, sorry, yeah, we went up this morning. 24 Thanksgiving meals for 24 families on their table. We don't cook it, we provide them all the fixings they need to make their own Thanksgiving dinner. So that's from the turkey all the way up. We have the turkeys already. You don't have to worry about turkey. Say, good. Okay. And we average it on a family of 4. Okay, so you would bring enough food other than the turkey so that someone could have a family of 4 Thanksgiving dinner. Everything. Pie, bread, cranberry sauce, whatever you would eat for Thanksgiving, bring to somebody else. Don't bring garbage. 2 years ago, we did this, and somebody brought, I can't remember, was it yams? Like 1 can of yams for a family of 4, and I'm like, now come on. You know good and well you're not going to eat yams for Thanksgiving dinner. Most people are going to take sweet potatoes, chop them up, right? Stir them together with some sugars and stuff, put some pecans on top. Yeah, that'd be good at your house, right? But for them unfortunate people, give them a can of yams. But hey, they wouldn't have anything if you didn't bring that, right? Okay, that was my shameless plug for good food. Oh, stovetop stuffing is fine. I eat that. That's good. So I'm just showing you what's up here. That's what. So this will be piled up in the next few weeks. So if you want to contribute to that, if you can't afford to bring the whole everything, bring like stuffing, cranberry. It'll all start to be sorted up here, and then we'll pick it out and send it. And then my father just handed me this. I guess he wants me to read it to you. He said I should put it in the bulletin, but I think I'll read it to you today because this is cool. A minister was completing a temperance sermon. Y'all know what temperance is? Robert, what is it? Temperate, so it means don't drink at all or drink, just temper your drinking. Oh, Baptists say you don't do it at all. Lutherans, it's a little bit, whatever. With great emphasis, he said, if I had all the beer in the world, I'd take it and pour it in the river. With even greater emphasis, he said, if I had all the wine in the world, I'd take it and pour it in the river. Finally, shaking his fist in the air, he said, and if I had all the whiskey in the world, I'd take it and pour it in the river. Sermon complete, he sat down. Song leader stood and cautiously announced with a smile, for our closing song, let's sing hymn number 365. Shall we gather at the river? Let's go! If you're just coming in, if you're on vacation, you may not be able to follow along so well this morning. I will encourage you to go to BeachBaptist.org, grab the sermons, because we are doing a little series. I don't do a lot of series, but this isn't really a series. It's just building on each week. Maybe it's a series. I don't know. Now, sometimes you can come in on a series and go, okay, that's kind of like that. This one, you really got to start at the beginning. It's called starting point. So you got to kind of start at the beginning. So if you go back 2 weeks, you'll be caught up and you'll catch. So this is week 3, but I'll give you a little bit of review and you can kind of get caught up, and then rest of it's on your own. But we decided a few weeks ago that everything has a starting point. You had a starting point. I had a starting point. Some of you were started on mistake. Some of you were started on purpose. But we all had a starting point. Everything in life has a starting point, no matter what it is. And we typically didn't think about our faith having a starting point, unless you were Baptist, Robert. And they always want to make sure you knew when your faith started. That's what the white page in the back of your Bible is for, to write down the day that you became a Christian. So some people do have an actual starting point that they remember. My point is the starting point may have been wrong. How you started may have been wrong. So we asked everyone to kind of forget how you started and reanalyze how you would become a Christian today as an adult if you had never heard anything before. If you never heard the story of Jonah or of Noah or of any of those other, or even Adam and Eve, the whole very beginning of that, if you've never heard any of those stories, where would this whole thing start, and how would your faith be restarted? So we're asking you to hit the restart button to almost become a Christian again. And then if there's anybody in there who's not actually a Christian, this is a great starting point for you to be in, that you can actually start your life in Christ. And we're looking at how the Bible lays it out. Actually, we're not looking at how the Bible lays it out. We're looking at how the Bible, the stories in the Bible, describe it being. Because you got to really dig for this. Because some of you grew up in church, you grew up maybe Catholic or Presbyterian or whatever, you went to Bible schools, and that's how your faith became known. You kind of, building blocks, and then some of you got baptized after Vacation Bible School, and that's the date you wrote in your book. Or something else happened in your life, and you watched things happen around, and then you built your faith based on those building blocks. Maybe somebody just walked up to you and said, "Hey, turn or burn," and you're like, "Turn." He said, "Pray this," and you prayed that, and you were like, then he high-fived you and went, "You're in," and you were like, "Cool, what am I into?" They're like, "I don't know, I'm just here visiting, I'm doing some ministry work." And they left town, and you were sitting there going, "I was just having a good time here on the beach, and now I'm in something. I don't know what I'm in." Maybe that was your starting point. Not a really good starting point at all. But we want to look at our faith and its starting point. Today we're going to look at not only our faith having a starting point, but how faith itself got its starting point. Did you know that faith, the actual faith, how we're even coming to faith, had a starting point? Every major faith religion, there are three, has a starting point. Well, every major religion has a starting point, but the three majors have the same starting point. And whether you know it or not, you have embraced one of the three major faith religions in your life, or a spinoff of one of them. We all came from the same place. It all started in one place, and then of that same religion you joined, maybe you abandoned it. You may have come along in one and jumped ship and switched over and started going in a different path, but they all had a starting point. You all had a starting point, and that faith itself had a starting point. And that's what I want to look at today, because all these faiths have a history, and you and I usually aren't very interested in it, in the history of our faith that we're following, because we're too interested in today. Yeah, I know faith had a start, but I'm really worried about paying the rent today. I understand that there's always a start, but hey, what's God going to do for me tomorrow? I don't have enough food. I'm about to lose my job, I'm about to lose my house, whatever. So you're more involved in what's today, and we're not really kind of sometimes interested in how this whole thing started. But I think in that, we will see how God can help us today if we understand how this whole thing, the whole thing got started, not just a little bit. And some of you drifted off from this faith because you don't know the history of where it started. So the three largest faith religions all had the same starting point. Do y'all know what the three largest faith religions are? Christianity's one, Islam is one, and Judaism. That's right. Those three all had the same start. Everything came out of those three faiths. Some of y'all said Catholicism or Catholic. That all came from one of those. But Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all came from the same place. And the Bible tells us the history of all this. We're actually going to see it and then kind of understand it. All three believe these things. I forgot to wear my glasses. Here's the three things they all believe. There's a single God that created heaven and earth. One God. They believe that the first man on earth was named Adam. Okay, just checking some of your history. Feel free to jot that stuff out all you want. Muhammad taught, though, that he was the first Muslim and also the first prophet. Judaism believed that Adam and Eve were the first people, kind of like us. And then Christianity teaches that we teach that story because a guy named Jesus came along and he told the Adam and Eve story about the first man and woman. And we just believe that if a guy can predict his own death, burial, and resurrection and then pull it off, we ought to listen to what he says. It's just kind of where we are in this thing. So Jesus says Adam was alive, and we kind of go with it. So there's a creator. They all believe that there's a creator, and they all believe that there was a first person that he created. And then here's the other thing that they all believe, that all three believe that humanity then came along and messed it up. We, people, came along and messed up what God had created. God created this perfect world, and then humans came along and started making decisions and messed the whole thing up. Now, whether you believe the Adam and Eve story or not, you know, we do got to believe, and we have to. I did that. I see the light. I saw the light. Wasn't even part of the process, but it worked. But you got to agree that we did mess the world up, and that the world is messed up. So regardless of how you believe that part of it happened, it's messed up. And last week we talked about at some point we've got to stop calling what we do mistakes. Because we looked at it and we said, some of you make the same mistake over and over and over again. Those cannot be called mistakes after the first time. So we might have to start calling us what we really are. Sinners, that's right. That's a good church word, but it's a good, solid word, because that's what we are. And we have sin in our life, and that's what keeps us from our relationship with God. So we don't want to make those over and over. So all major faiths believed it was perfect, and then we messed it up. Then the other thing they all believe, every single one believe, that it all centers around one man. This fixing of it all comes about with one man. Anybody know his name? Oh, y'all have been conditioned. If you ask a question in church you don't really know, say Jesus, right? Yeah, well, that's not right, okay? Because if you know history, Judaism doesn't believe in Jesus as the guy who fixed it. Islam doesn't believe in Jesus as the guy who fixed it. So where did it all begin? In one man. What was his name? Thank you, Abraham. Every major faith religion traces their history back to one guy, and his name was Abraham. That's the place where they all come together, and coincidentally, it's the place where they all diverge. The one guy, Abraham. And Abraham, Islam goes in one direction, and Judaism goes in another. And then some hundreds of years later, Judaism's going along in their way, and Christianity splits off of them and goes in a whole nother direction from them. But we all trace it back to Father Abraham. You even sang the song in Bible school. Father Abraham had many sons. Had many sons, had Father Abraham. Okay, some of y'all grew up in church, some of y'all heathens. That's all right. But we all three sort of look back as Abraham as our founding father. God began to intersect mankind at Abraham in a very strategic way to fix the problem that we had created, our mistakes. All the mistakes that those guys were making back then. God needed to intersect humanity and fix it, and he chose Abraham. And here's why we bring it up, because whether you believe all of Genesis, I mean, I talk to Christians all day long, or all week long, and many people will say, well, yeah, I don't know about that whole Jonah thing, or I don't know about that whole Noah's Ark thing. I don't know about those stories. That's okay. You don't have to believe it. We talked about that when we talked about following Jesus. He didn't ask you to be a believer in the stories. He asked you to follow him. But because there is this recorded conversation that has survived over 4,000 years between God and Abraham, and it illustrates a tension that you and I have felt, every single one of us. We have asked this particular question in our lives, And I think you've got to deal with this if you're going to have a big boy faith. If you're going to put on your big boy drawers and get on about life, you're going to have to answer and reckon with this question that you're already asking, and we need to have a big boy realization about God. And it revolves around a question that you and I will reckon with one way or another. Or maybe you already have, and I don't know how you did it. We'll see. So if there is a God, here's the question. If there is a God, how am I doing? How do I know where I stand with God? How do I know that the God of the universe, who is great, great big, is happy with me? What have I done? What am I doing? How do I look? Could be as simple as that. How do I know where I stand with God? I really, really want to know. When somebody asks, where are you going to die when you go to heaven? Where are you going to die when you go to heaven? Where are you going to go when you die? And you say, well, I hope I go to heaven. What is generating that hope? Why do you hope you know where you're going? What is it about your life? What is it that's missing that you can have assurance of what's up? Did you know that in Genesis, we're told how you know for sure? Before Jesus, before Muhammad, before the Ten Commandments, before the law, all 600 of them, we're told, before Judaism even starts, we're told how you can stand and know where you stand with this great, big God. So that story in just a minute, we're going to read it, but first I got to give you a little modern day illustration. I need mallet. And a chair would be nice. No, you know what? I'll just sit you here. No, I better get a chair. Somebody's going to fuss at me. Bring me a chair. Bring me a chair. Anybody. Take your time. It's all right. We got all day. Come up here. Now, what I'm going to illustrate is something that has happened in our house a couple of times. Will happen again. Time out chair. No. Sit down. Put your feet up. No, sit on them. Don't put your feet down. If you put your feet down, I'll get in trouble. Now, if you've ever been in our house, you know, and how many of y'all have tile floor? Yeah, lots of people. It's Florida. We don't have carpet. If a kid comes to our house, or they're in the kitchen, and they want to get something out of the cabinet, there is a 50-50 chance that what they get in their hand is going to break. Hence the reason we've gone to Tervis Tumbler. Okay? But typically, this is a sound that we hear. Your feet up? You need to put them up. Yeah, I know you're wearing a skirt. Just cover it up. That's a sound you hear in our house. I don't need no rag. We're not cleaning up till later. But it's never quite that good. It's more like that when it happens. Short dress, shouldn't have worn short dress. Don't you know what Christians wear? That's what that's what the towel was for. I thought you were protecting the stage. Sorry. So that's what it kind of looks like. And then we'll hear that noise. And somebody will say, what happened? And we walk in. Now you can put your feet down. Put your feet down. No, why not? Oh, because you'll get glass. Don't, yeah. But you see how our feet are barefoot? They're always barefoot. So when we come into the kitchen, we find a kid standing butt against the countertop with that all around them. And our first question is, what'd you do? To which one of them, with blood probably coming out of something, says, sorry. I didn't mean to. I slipped. It came off, or the shelf fell, or whatever it is. You know, there's something happened. And there's this big sea of glass around them. And they're barefoot. And we see that. Typically, I say, good luck with that. And I go back to my office. Call me when you get that mess cleaned up. Right? Isn't that what I do? Some of you know good and well I don't do that, right? How many of you know I don't do that? Right? Oh, you know I don't do that. So what you're saying is, based on your belief in God, some of you think I'm more compassionate than God. In essence, you actually think I'm a little godlier than God. Let me show you. Here's what we would typically do. Find them big pieces and we kick them out of the way. Get up on the chair. On your knees. Get on my back. Here, you don't need the... You want to go down easy? And then we walk back into that. Have you ever had one of those messages in your house where you're like, oh, crap, where do I start? Get a broom, get it started. But you see, along around Abraham, that's what God saw. And he waded through the mess, through the sea of glass, and rescued us. And he used one man to do it. And yet you still today will live a life that says, God, you've forgotten me. God, why aren't you answering my prayers? God, why aren't you doing what I'm asking you? God, why? It doesn't feel like you love me. It feels like you've left me here to clean up my own mess. And that's how we live. So when I said some of you think that's how you think of God, and yet you know good and well I'm not going to leave a barefoot 12-year-old in the middle of a pile of glass, possibly bleeding, and tell her to clean it up herself. And yet you think God does that to you sometime in your life. Well, that's your mess. Now clean it up. Let me know when you got it done. And that's just not the way he does it. Huge mess. Where are you going to start? God had to choose. Man had polluted the world. I mean, you think you've got it bad? You think our world's bad? You know, everybody's like singing the blues about how the world's going to end. We don't know what's going to happen. Listen, back then, if you saw somebody you liked, you took them. It was legal. If you didn't like what somebody else did to you, you killed them. It's legal. Corruption, greed, it was commonplace. There were no cities and nations kind of like you and I know about them now and how it looks, but whatever it was kind of like the survival of the fittest and the richest. Some of you are like, that's what it is today. Well, then listen, much hasn't changed, and neither has our attitude towards God. We're still wandering around wondering why God would let this happen to our nation. Why God would do such a thing. That's what we're asking. And that's what some were asking back then. And quite frankly, God's looking at it going, I got to do something. I got to start somewhere. I got to start cleaning up that mess somewhere. And he picked one guy. And all of our major faith religions believe that God picked this imperfect guy named Abraham to start cleaning up the mess that mankind had made. And around 1876 BC, God interrupted humanity and he walked up to a man named Abraham to start cleaning up the mess. And what's so funny is Abraham was so normal. He was absolutely normal in your and I's standards. He was not a superhero of the faith. As a matter of fact, one time, he and his wife Sarah, they're going through Egypt. And he sees this coming because his wife is so hot. Okay? That's the modern day translation of what? Hot. Yeah. And he says to himself, man, if I go in there, they're going to take my wife because she's hot. Because that was how things are done. So he goes through, and what happens? Pharaoh's people find out that his wife is, go ahead and say hot in church, it's fine. They find out that she's hot. They tell Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, I want her. They come to Abraham. Abraham says, oh, gosh, they're going to take my life and then take my wife. Life, then wife. They're going to get her anyway. Hey, listen, she's not really my wife. She's more like a sister. You can have her. That's what he said to them. So they took her. He just gave her up. I'll get another one. Matter of fact, I already got another one. Twice as hot as that one. No, he didn't say that. That was my part. So and I say that to tell you, this is just a guy. Just a man named Abraham. I mean, it's almost like God's up there. If he played the lottery, he doesn't. But if he did, he would like pull a name out. Abraham. That's the guy. That's who I'm going to pick. I'm going to pick Abraham. I'm going to go see if Abraham would take the deal. Wow. So he had all kinds of problems and issues. But God had to start somewhere, so he picks imperfect Abraham. Let's look at Genesis. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 is kind of where it starts. Lord had said to Abram, go from your country. Abram is short for Abraham. Changes his name in a little while. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. Basically, he says, I want you to get up, and I want you to leave everything you know, and I want you to go where I tell you. I'm not even telling you where we're going yet. I just want you to get up and start going, and I don't want you to ask why. How many of y'all would ask why? Yeah. Some of y'all won't even go to Haiti. Some of y'all won't even go to Tennessee, which is probably not bad. Some of y'all won't go anywhere unless you call ahead and find out if it's going to be okay for you when you get there. I mean, think about this for a minute. God still does this. He hadn't changed. God will tell you to go somewhere. The problem with you and I is we just kind of stop and figure it out. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. Can I take my blanket? My pillow? Can I have my stuff? What am I going to do when I get there? Well, I won't be able to eat. If I don't have a job, I can't eat. I'm not going. Can't go. That must have been the devil. God would have given me more. God would have given me a spirit of peace over it, is what he would have done. Yes, he would have. Please. Here's what he does say, verse 2. He gives him 3 promises. 3 promises, that's it. I will make you into a great nation. That came true. You know that, right? Well, Israel will tell you, that's us. We became those great nations. The Arab community will tell you, no, that's us. We became great nations. There may be arguments about whose nations are whose, but there's no arguments that Abraham became great nations. Every single one of those guys lays claim to Abraham and claim that promise. That's cool. 4,000-year-old promise came true. Second promise, I will bless you and I will make your name great. I'll bless you and I will make your name great. Who's ever heard of Abraham before today? Funny. Show them that next slide. Have you ever heard of this guy? Cheddar Laomer. You ever read that guy? And you all call yourself Bible readers. He's in the same story. Cheddar Laomer. Yeah, I know some of y'all are going, that ain't in my Bible. Do a quick search. If you had an internet Bible, you could do it really fast. Cheddar Laomer was the king of Edom. Everybody on the planet at that time knew who Cheddar Laomer was. Not a soul knew who Abraham was. And yet God took nobody Abraham, and 4,000 years later, you all know his name. And to Cheddar Laomer, he said, sorry. A great man just went off into oblivion. Isn't that cool? God made a promise 4,000 years ago, and here we are talking about him. Abraham. Yes, his name was great. We're all the way around the world in a totally different language, and we still know his name. His name's great. Third promise he made. All the peoples on earth are going to be blessed through you. That promise came forth because every single Jewish person will tell you everything we do through Judaism is blessing people. They're right. All the Muslims in the world will tell you everything that the Muslims have done and Islam is doing is blessing people because of who we are. They're right. Christianity will say all the people we feed, all the hospitals we build in the name of Jesus, they're blessing people. They're right. To which I think God would say, that's what I said. That's what I said. By Abraham's name, all people groups will receive a blessing. You and I do not have, newsflash, the corner on blessing people. I mean, even a broke clock works twice a day. Some of y'all didn't get that. Are you okay with knowing that Muslims bless people? Are you okay with knowing that Judaism blesses people? They all do good. They all have a strain of good in it. They all have a strain of bad, just like you and I do. But this promise is not for you. You were not invented yet. Christianity wasn't around. When God said, all the peoples of the planet will be blessed through your Abraham, your name, he was talking about everybody. And I'm sorry to say, you and I haven't blessed everybody. Some other people have done some work. Now, before you send your emails to Sean@IDon'tGiveACrap.com, make sure you go back and listen to the first two sermons, okay? Because you're out there going, well, this guy's a wacko. Might be true. But you got to start at the beginning, don't forget. So, interesting ancient coincidences? I think not. I think God made promises that are coming through, right? All three majors say he's ours. So, now Abraham's an old man. We'll jump ahead in our story. And he's thinking, man, God, it's getting close. I'm about to kick out of here. You know, and that whole you're going to make me a father of many nations. You remember that, God, don't you? Well, I'm getting old. And you're going to have to do something about it. Or if you don't, I am. Y'all ever done that? You know, you got a really cool promise from God. He just can't get on board with how fast you want it done. So you start to fix things for him. Well, yeah, he kind of did that. But here's what Abraham's saying. Abraham's looking at God going, listen, I don't have an heir. I'm getting ready to die. And if I die, all of my possessions are going to go to Eleazar. Y'all know who Eleazar was? Who was he, Connie? Huh? Nope. Eleazar's Abraham's. There you go. You say it out loud. Go ahead. He was the chief servant of Abraham. Without an heir, without a child, Eleazar, the chief servant, gets everything. And Abraham's going, God, man, I don't want everything to go to Eleazar. That would be bad. As a matter of fact, Abraham's almost like, I don't really care about the whole nation thing. Can you just give me a son? I'll just take one son. Maybe God, maybe you bit off more than you could chew. Maybe you shouldn't have made such a big promise in the beginning. I'm willing to let you out of it. Can you at least just give me one son? Would that be okay? To which God says in chapter 15, verse 4 of that same book, Genesis, then the word of the Lord came to him. This man, Eleazar, will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. So he comes back at him with this promise. And in verse 5 he says, now he took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars. Indeed, if you can count them. Now, how many of y'all from big cities? Just a few? Oh, awesome. Well, while you're here on the beach, you can go out at night when it's really, really dark, and you can actually see stars. I mean, they're up there. Now, if you were where Abraham was in the Middle East, you know, after everybody had gone to bed and they turned the skyscraper lights off, the pyramid, when they turn the lights off in the pyramids, we'll do it that way. Abraham was able to look up, and from horizon to horizon was nothing but stars. It was something he could not even imagine doing. Then he said, so shall your offspring be. Not only are you going to get one, you're going to get that many. That many. Reiterating the promise. You're going to be a great nation. Then the Bible records a statement that's so profound. This is very personal to you and me. This is, in this statement, for the first time in history, don't show it yet, God states the nature of the relationship between God and man. God shows us exactly what it takes to know where you stand with God. As if, how in the world can someone so finite as me have a relationship with this great big God? Is it even possible? God says yes. In his next statement, he'll define the terms of your relationship with God. So you're going to need to get your pen in just a second, because you're going to have to make some notes about the things God says that you're going to have to do in order to have a relationship with him. Because those people ask, and so do you, can I know? Can anyone know? You know, you used to think you knew as a child, but now as an adult, you've seen some things, you're like, I don't think I really know. Where do I stand with this invisible God? This statement was the diversion of all three major faiths. This is where it all went in different directions, because not any of them, none of them, not you as a Christian, not Judaism, not Islam, embraced this next statement fully without adding to it. They added their own things to it. They helped God, so to speak, in their faith. It's so simple, and actually it's too good to be true, so you're not going to have to write a whole bunch. Before the Ten Commandments, before the law, 2,600 years before Islam, 2,000 years before Jesus, before Moses, any of that, God says to Abraham, verse 6, and Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. That's it. End of story. Abram believed the Lord, and God gave him a righteous standing with himself. Now the rest of you, before you go off, but Jesus, but that was then, and I'm in the New Testament. No, this is before any of that, okay? Before. Abram believed God. He trusted God. He put trust in God. You have it easier. You have the ability to have the Holy Spirit in you. God made it easier for you and I to do that, but that is still what we do. We believe, we trust in God. And when I do that, God gives me his righteousness. I now know, as long as I trust God, I am in right standing with him. When I find myself going, oh, where you are, I'm not trusting God. When I find myself going, we've got to do something, or this place is going to die, I don't find myself trusting God. Now, I'm not saying you don't do anything. I'm saying you trust God. And if God causes you to do something, he gives you his righteousness, and you know where you stand with him. Listen, what I'm saying is, if you've ever said, or are you saying, I don't get it, you don't got it. I don't understand. You don't understand. Could it really be this simple? Obviously it was. God waded through a sea of glass, found Abraham, and said, Abraham, this is what we're going to do. Abraham looked around at his own life and said, I got no kids, and you say I'm going to have that many kids. Fine. I believe you. I believe you. And God said, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I want from you. And as you read these stories, he's looking at you going, that's what I want from you. I don't want you to get all hoodoo, fooey, whatever. I want you to believe me. I want you to trust me. I don't want you looking at people. I don't want you asking. I want you to look at me. I want you to trust me, and you will know exactly where you stand with me. Here's another way you can say it. Trusting God results in a right standing with God. You've probably heard that before. If you trust God, you get a right standing with God. Interesting. Hundreds of years later, Jews would come along, and they would miss this. They would say, no, here's the way. You've got to become Jewish. You see, we're God's chosen people. And all you got to do is become Jewish, and you can be like us. It's all about who you know, who you're born into, who you're related to. Listen, you Gentiles, listen, there's this little process that you can go through, and you'll be like us. And if you do that, you can know God. To which many men looked at and said, forget him. I'm talking about circumcision. Just wasn't going to happen. That's what they wanted you to do. That was it. Can you imagine? Jewish people knew this. They knew this story, and they come up with that garbage. Oh, no. It can't be that simple. You've got to become like us. Here's your scissors. As a matter of fact, when Jesus showed up, they looked at him and said, we don't need you. We're sons and daughters of Abraham. We've got Abraham. We don't need you. That's what they said. Many today are still saying the exact same thing. 600 some odd years after Jesus, Muhammad comes along, and he would say, there's one way. Here's how you know you're in right standing with true God. You've got to believe that there's one true God. You have to believe in his prophets, and you must do many works of righteousness. And in the end, Allah will weigh all those things together. And if your good ones outweigh your bad ones, you're in a right standing with God. Basically, it's all in what you believe and what you do, but you're not going to know till the end. And Allah will let you know. Christianity, 30 minutes after Jesus left the planet for the second time, they started changing it around. No. You've got to be Jewish, and you have to follow the law of Moses. And then there was a whole group of people that says, how can they follow the law of Moses? They don't even know the law of Moses. It's got to be this way. You need to be able to do this. You have to pray this many times in a day. You have to go to church this many times in a week. You have to do this. You have to do that. Then they started writing all those laws. You and I do that today. No, I believe in God. I got that. Now. What do I do? No, I believed in Jesus. Yeah, I accept it. Hey, he's my Savior, yada, 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 Hare Krishna, whatever I got to do, that part's done. Now what? Stop. You know where you are with God as long as you're trusting him. I trusted God. That's not a one-time deal. Trusting God is a minute deal. Yeah, I know you trusted him when you were 7. But how about when you were 27, getting high in college? Were you trusting him then? Well, no, I didn't know. How about last week when you were mean to your wife? Were you trusting him then? No. But he understands me. I live in a fallen world. God bless America, Christians. We screwed this thing up big time. Islam screwed it up big time. Judaism screwed it up big time. I just screwed up 3 big times by saying screwed up 4 times. I mean, honestly, check your heart. Check what you think about today. I've done a few things today to see if that's where your mind would go. How many of y'all are worried about that? The glass. Who's going to clean that up? Shouldn't do that up there. Now we got to replace that floor. It's going to be scratched. How many of y'all worried about that? I said the word screwed up 4 times. Go ahead. Be honest. Quit lying. Y'all are lying. How many of y'all like to lie in church? Thank you, Dennis. See, just believing is too difficult. Just trusting God is way too difficult. It's the so simplest thing, but it's way too difficult for you and I because we need some affirmation. We need some rules to follow. We need some things to look after. All through history, it's been the exact same way. So God gave them some. They couldn't follow those. Then he realized they couldn't follow him, so he gave them Jesus. Now we can't follow him. Believing's just too difficult. Way on. Somebody get that text message. Is it my phone? It's my phone. Notice I didn't answer it. Listen, way through Reformation, church has been split over this single issue of how do you have a right standing with God? How do you know when you've believed enough? 4,000 years ago, before anyone called themselves Muslims or called themselves Jews or called themselves Christian, God revealed this secret plan to Abraham. Trust me. And it's almost impossible to think that this most high God would make the standard so low that he would put the bottom rung of the ladder so low to the ground. That he saw us in the sea of glass that was the mess of our own making, and he waded through it, and he picked one guy to see if he would trust him, and he did, and created a path for us to get out of it. He didn't leave us where we were, and he doesn't leave you where you are. He made this so simple, but I think we missed it. God said, trust me. Will you really do what Abraham did? Will you, even though it seems impossible? I'm going to believe that you'll do what you said you would do, and I'll believe you'll keep your promises. I believe you'll always be there for me. I believe you'll be my comforter. I believe you'll be my provider. I believe you'll do all those things that you said you would do. Will you do that? Will you just trust him? And you've heard that over and over and over. There's a song. It's called Trust. He didn't say that. We said that. Trust. Not good enough. Obey. Yeah, that's good. Trust. Obey. You know why? Because you are messed up when it comes to obeying. Trust you can use with your mouth. Obeying requires you to live a certain life for everybody else, and you can't do that. So the church decided, I'm going to make them trust and obey. And as they don't obey, charge them. Charge them. Did I tell y'all, or did I just tell my Sunday school class? I wish all we had to do was obey. It would make my job so much easier. Seriously, I could sit in my office, and when I found out one of you didn't obey, just call you in. That little infraction you did, that's $10. And I'll get you out of it. Seriously, that's how it all started. It's kind of still going on that way today. Some of you do some bigger things. I can get 50s and hundreds and a couple thousands out of some of you. Some of the things y'all done, I mean, like free labor for a year. It'd be so much easier. But when you're pastoring trusting, when you're pastoring listen to God, it makes you freak out because you're like, can't do that, can't do that, don't do that, you can't do that. Maybe you can do that. If you're trusting God, you can do that. How do I know if you're trusting God? I don't know if you're trusting God. I really wish I could just make you obey. And then I start singing that song. Trust and obey, for there's no other way. It's not even the right way, but just trust and obey. That's what I want. That's what you want. You want that. You want someone to tell you how to act. And God did. He said, trust me. Trust me. He even looked at Abraham and said, you know that whole thing with Sarah becoming your sister, giving her off to Pharaoh? A little embarrassing, but we're not going to hold that against you. Trust me. Trust me. You'll know that Abraham went on, didn't trust him very much even then. He had times when he didn't trust him. And that's not an excuse for you. You don't get to go, well, Abraham didn't do it, I don't have to do it. Yeah, you do. You're the one wondering if you're having a right standing with God. If you want to know it, have a right standing with God. Trust him. Trust him. Just trust him. Here's your question. What if the starting point of a relationship with God is simply trust him? What if the starting point with a relationship with God is simply trust him? That's hard. That's hard. Because of how you've been raised. It's hard because of what you've heard from people like me. It's hard from what you've seen in places like this. It's hard when you've seen people act. You've responded. It's hard because you weren't accepted. It's hard because this is the only place you'll ever find unconditional love just based on trust. You may not even get that at home. Many of you have never gotten it at a church. Many of you have never gotten it in the work. You're never going to get it in the workplace. But an unconditional love based on trust, you're not going to find anywhere else. You don't have an example of it. You only have examples of this other stuff. God simply said, trust me. So here's your homework. Inez, take some notes. You ready? You're going to need to write these down. I put them in YouVersion. If you got YouVersion, I went ahead and wrote them for you just because some of you are lazy. Here's your question, homework. Which of these statements best reflects your view of your faith? Not what you just heard today, okay? I don't want you, well, you convinced me, Pastor, I'm with you. Nope. What your true view of your faith was when you walked in the door. Because many of you are going to walk back out, you're going to get in your car and turn the radio on and go, whew, almost got me. I almost had to start trusting. Whew. Thank you, Lord, for not letting me get that. Which one of these best reflects? Number one, God accepts me based on my birth. Basically, who I know. My parents took me to church. Mom and dad were Christians. Grandma, granddad were Christians. Vicariously, I'm a Christian. Maybe because maybe you're Jewish. I was born into Jewish faith. I believe that God accepts me based on who I know or who I am. Second, God accepts me based on my behavior. If I do a certain thing, if I act a certain way, if I look a certain way, God accepts me. Some of you might say, He is pleased with me. Okay? Same thing. If you believe God is pleased with you when you act a certain way, then you're at number two. Number three, God accepts me on what I believe. What I believe. Some of you are out there going, I'm in a right standing with God because I believe Jesus died on the cross. And that's it? Come on. Come on. You had a salvation experience when you were 12. You think you're in a right standing with God because of that? Come on. This is big boy faith. It's really different. See that? Number four, a combination of some of the above three. I had an out. Where are you? That's your homework for this week to find out where you are. I'm telling you, we're building on this. It's going to get cool. It's going to get good. I know it's been boring for the first 3 weeks, but it's going to get good. Where are you? What do you believe? Chew on that for a week, and that's where we'll pick it up next week. Stand with me, and we'll get out of here. One quick announcement before you go. There is no health park tonight, so don't come here to go to the health park. If you still want to go to the health park and you live off the island, you may go ahead and visit. That'd be awesome. We just have no organized service at Health Park due to some extenuating circumstances. Is that a good word? John's not here to check my vocabulary, so if I mess something up this morning, it's John's fault. Then the rest of the stuff that's in the bulletin, I want you to be a part of this week, because while you're here, your family. I truly believe God put you here for a reason, okay? I hope you didn't come to church because it's Sunday. I hope you didn't come to Beach Baptist because it was the most convenient place on the beach to come to. I hope you came because you were trusting God and where you were supposed to go to church. And if you did that, then He spoke to you about something, and now you're going to have to go out there and deal with it. Okay? So you've got your own sea of broken glass that you need to deal with God in. Let Him carry you through it. All right? Go catch up last week. Follow along the next couple weeks if you're leaving town. And let's kind of change the way. of the way this thing goes. Maybe you're even going to change the way church is back at your house. I don't know. Maybe you're going to change the way your house is at home. God's got something for you. What we've put in place, John and them aren't here, but Frank and Inez, raise your hand. If you really think I'm wacko and you need to ask somebody who's a little wiser, it's Frank and Inez today. You send them an email. Just go find them. They'll give you your email address. You want to discuss some things, talk to them about it. That goes in it. Mine's on the back of the bulletin. Love to have discussions with you about this, especially where you are, because a lot of y'all are smarter than me. Totally understand that. And you've seen a lot and done a lot, and but what about what? I want to hear about that. Maybe if y'all all got together and sent me one email, that'd be easier, but let's chew on this, okay? Let's work our faith out like the Bible tells us to do. And let's see where we are. Come back next week and we'll deal with it some more. Who'll pray for us? Dennis, thank you. Pray for us and send us out.